day to you. My name is Afrika Mhlophe. We're live on this program called Pressing Matters. We're dealing with contemporary and contentious issues from a biblical perspective. In this section, we're dealing with the issue of leadership, and based on this book, A Passion for Position. And we have a discussion, the previous segment, and very robust discussion about what a leader is and how for us to judge who a leader is. And because partly we have dealt with issues in the body of Christ in South Africa, and I suppose in other parts of the world, where we had controversies that surround leaders. Generally, we expect good things to come out of leaders. We expect the values of Christ to be exemplified by anyone who occupies a position of leadership in the church, because they're supposed to represent Christ. But it's not always the case. And the reason for that is because of something called character. So I want to just share a few thoughts with you on what I think a character is and how do we inculcate good character. The important thing to understand that is good leadership is built upon a moral foundation of personal convictions and core values. That's leadership. Good leadership is not built upon good theology. Good theology is good for in terms of aiding to leadership. It capacitates leadership. It's a tool to help you to minister well. But what's the most important part of it, of good leadership, is a moral foundation of personal convictions and core values. These values are not contingent on the behavior of others, meaning it's not based on how other people behave. They are your values. You believe in them. And they are not for sale. They cannot be traded. And so they are vital to you. And so the issue, there's some word called character. What is character? And the Bible talks about this, the issue of character. Character basically can sum up as an aggregate of features and traits that form the individual or the person. They are who you are. A character is who you are when nobody else is watching. It's not about how you perform, but it's who you are in private. And a character is linked to the thing of integrity. Your word, what you promise, what you say. The word integrity comes from, it's originates from French. It means integrity, which means oneness or wholeness. Integrity is you being one. What you say and what you do are one thing. There's no conflict, between what you say and what you do. You're not a person who walks in kind of a conflict. There's congruence with what your words are and what your conduct is. And so I mentioned in the previous section that a Christian leader is a Christian first before he's a leader. And therefore he needs to live his Christianity, not only preach it. A message that is lived has more power than one that is merely preached. One statement that I quote in the book, it says, no one preaches a sermon better until he preaches it to himself, to his own heart. So a sermon you live is more powerful than a sermon you preach. Okay, the Bible says in the book about Jesus, in the book of John chapter 1, verse 14, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. The word tabernacle, the Word moved from logos, from theory, to become a living substance and demonstrated it, the Word. And we saw the Word and beheld the glory as be of the Son of God. And so, therefore, it's important to understand that the leader, who he is, more important than what he does. So, a lot of leaders, therefore, miss that. And therefore, now, here's the situation and how Dr. Clinton defined leadership. He says, a leader is a person with a God-given capacity, with a God-given responsibility to influence a specific group of God's people towards God's purpose for the group. I'll repeat that again. A leader is a person with a God-given capacity, with a God-given responsibility to influence a specific group of God's people towards God's purpose for the group. In other words, a leader is an individual who doesn't live for himself. He lives for other people. There is other people he wants to move from one position to the next position, right? Now here's the story. In the Bible, in the book of Exodus, chapter 3, verse 7 to verse 8, God speaks to a man called Moses. Now, who's Moses? This man is a fugitive from Pharaoh. He's raised in Pharaoh's house after a decree to kill all the sons of Egypt, of the Jews. He's saved by the daughter of Pharaoh. He's raised in Pharaoh's house. He has the best education of that time. He is raised in royalty. but inside he's a Jew. Although on the outside he has Egyptian benefits and education, but he is a Jew. And therefore, who he is on the inside eventually overcomes what he experiences on the outside. He gets into a battlefield and fights in support of a Hebrew. And then he gets to kill an Egyptian and then gets into trouble. Because core, who he is Hebrew. Although what is experienced on the outside is Egyptian education. But what's inside eventually is more powerful than what's on the outside. And then he gets into trouble because he allowed the inside to come out. And then he runs from Pharaoh. He's in the plains of Midian as a shepherd to his father Jethro. He's there watching the sheep of Jethro. And while he's in the field, a voice begins to speak to him through a burning bush. Now, let's pause for a moment. I don't know about you, but if I was there alone in the bush, and I was there with the sheep, and then there is a bush that is burning, and it's not being consumed. And I'm watching this thing, and some time passes by, and nothing, there's no special effects. I know we're on TV, but this is not special effects. It's not made up. It's real stuff. This bush is burning, and nothing is happening. And then the voice, and it gets closer, we know what happened, and the voice speaks to him, take off your sandals, for the place that you're in is holy grounds. And God speaks to him. Right there, for me, I don't know about you people, if God spoke to me through a burning bush, I would every year on that date commemorate, have a celebration. Because I would figure out God has spoken to many of you in many ways, but none of you has ever had God speak to you through a burning bush. It'll mark my ministry. It'll be a turning point. Like, this is amazing. And it'll be like, I had God speak to me through a burning bush. I don't know about how you people hear God, but God spoke to me through a burning bush. It'll be amazing. So God eventually gets the attention of Moses, and he speaks to him. He says to him, I've surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt. And I've heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sorrows. I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them out from the land to a good and large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, the place of the Canaanites and all that. Now God says, I've seen the oppression of my people. And it tells the position, they're in Egypt. And I've heard their cry under the taskmasters, and I've come down. Now, here's the interesting thing. God sees, God hears, God knows the condition of his people and who are in Egypt. He sees their condition. He sees their position. He puts Moses into a position because of the bad position of his people. So Moses owes his position because of the position of God's people. Moses then gets to be told by God, I have come down. Now, we didn't see God coming down from the throne. Yeah. So evidently, Moses is a manifestation of divine leadership. It is not Moses who wants to deliver people out of Egypt. It is God who wants to deliver people out of Egypt. But God is manifesting his heart and mission and vision through Moses. So Moses is an embodiment of God's vision. He carries the mandate of God. He is burning with the passion that God has for what he calls his people. I've heard the oppression of my people. The people belong to God. Moses himself belongs to God. The assignment is God's. The Egyptians are being punished for oppressing God's people. So Moses would not have been a leader had God's people not been in a bad position. So he would not have had his position if God's people were not in a bad position. A.W. Tozer made a statement, says, God will never use you greatly until he wounds you deeply. So true leaders are wounded people. They're wounded over injustice. They're in leadership because God is stirred up because of the condition of his people. Therefore, he gives them a position, so through their position, they will change the position of God's people. So they don't occupy a position for themselves. They owe the position to the position of God's people. What is Moses told to do? He is told that the people of God have to move from Egypt to Canaan, right? That's why Moses exists. Now, how would you judge if Moses is successful or not? Not by how much Moses prays. He prayed 40 days and 40 nights in the mountain, fasting, dry fast. You won't judge Moses' success by how much he prays. You won't judge Moses' success by how much revelation he has. He speaks to God face to face. You won't judge Moses successful whether he has by how much power he has. He had so much power. In fact, let me say to you, nobody I've ever heard of, past, present, who has ever had the kind of power Moses has had. The guy has a stick which he points, and waters part. The guy has a stick which he uses, and plagues come down. Manna comes down. Quails fall from the sky. He speaks to God. A cloud follows this guy for 40 days, a ball of fire by night and a cloud by day. Angels, heaven, the weather, the climate, all of heaven's resources are backing Moses. Nothing Moses wants, he doesn't get. God speaks to him face to face. God himself defends Moses when somebody accuses Moses. The sons of Korah, the earth opens up and swallows them. Miriam and Aaron, God comes down and deals with them. Moses is viewed by God as the most humble man on earth. He is so valued by God. He's backed up fully by God. He's given the book of Genesis. He goes past Revelation. He gets words of knowledge, words of wisdom. He gets to know what creation was. He wasn't there. He gets to talk about the past. He talks about the future, that he will raise a prophet amongst you in Deuteronomy 18. He prophesies about Jesus. He speaks of the past. He speaks of the future. The whole Old Testament is called the law of Moses. The guy has the glory of God on his face. People cannot even look at him. He has to put a sheet on his face. He has so much power, so much authority. No one matches Moses in Egypt, in Israel. He's a key leader in Israel. Yet, all of the power that was invested upon this one person is invested for one reason. It is to take the people of God out of Egypt into Canaan. It's not for him. The power given upon Moses is not given for the benefit of Moses. As a matter of fact, Moses himself does not go to the promised land. We know this. He doesn't go to the promised land. He dies. He just looks at it and doesn't go there. Yet he's successful, having not gone to the promised land himself. The people, he took them in and he gave the vision over to Joshua. The vision is so big, it's so enduring, it's multi-generational. It's not just for one generation. It's able to be passed on from one generation to the next. Joshua takes over, doesn't even make a new vision. So Moses goes to the promised land it doesn't go to the promised land, the people go there. Yet today, there are leaders who are in the promised land by themselves with the people in Egypt. Then we call this successful leadership. Leadership is not about the leader being in the promised land. It's about the people being in the promised land. Even if the leader himself doesn't go there, if the people get there, the leader is successful. Okay? So that's Christian leadership. It's not about the leader. It's not about his sermons. It's not about his power. It's not about his revelation. It's not about his prayer. It's about how he moves people from a bad position to a better one. If he doesn't do that, he's wasted people's time, he's wasted people's effort, resources, offerings, everything, because he thought this thing was about him. As you can see, we've missed it by far in the church. We need to recover this and find out how do we get this back to the right place. Let me stop there and allow for some questions.
Pastor Afrika, I have just two questions to ask. Firstly, as a leader, how do you prevent expiration or becoming a one-hit wonder as a leader? Because now you are talk of the town, and then suddenly everything just drops and just falls. Your momentum, in a way, just leaves as a leader. That's my first question. How do you prevent expiring as a leader? My second question is, if you look at ministers of nowadays, there are international ministers, then there are local ministers. What is the difference between the two? Because you talked about the capacity, it's a God-given capacity to reach a certain group. And our mission, our Great Commission says that go ye into all the world, preach to the Samaritans, Judah, Jerusalem, and unto the uttermost parts of the world. So what is the difference? How can I get the capacity to reach an international platform or international ministry? Because I don't want to stay as a local minister and just preach to East London. That's the question I have. Those are the two questions, expiration and international and local.
Well, it's impossible to expire, as you put it, and to come to an end without fulfilling your mission, it means you didn't know your mission. So Moses does not die, by the way, until the Lord kills him or takes him out. Even death cannot take you when you're in a mission. So Moses did not die of old age. He did not die of sickness. He did not die of accidents. He wasn't struck by lightning. He wasn't bitten by a snake. He didn't fall off the cliff. He wasn't killed by Pharaoh. So sickness did not kill Moses. The enemy, physical, Philistines or whatever, Egyptians or Canaanites, nothing killed Moses. Moses died when he finished his mission. So when you are following the mission of God and your eyes are kept on God, only when you are finished with that mission must you expire. If you are living for the applause of man, you will then think, I've got enough applause now, I can retire, right? So it's simple. Your eyes, if you keep your eyes on the right thing, the Bible says, write the vision plainly that those who see it may run with it. So Moses knew the difference between the wilderness and Canaan. He's not going to stop in the wilderness and say, we have arrived. Because God is still speaking into his ear. That's why Joshua and Caleb would then say, there's still lands to take. Caleb at the old age, I'm 80. Yeah. But yet, there's the mountain. Please, Joshua, give me the mountain. There's still land, territory to be taken. So, and they knew that, God had said to them, they knew that they cannot rest until they've taken all the territory God had promised them. It's not a matter of, I've had enough. It was not a personal possession. It was a national possession. So it wasn't that I've had enough land. It wasn't about you. It was about the whole nation taking the full possession of its inheritance. So we had to fight until, that's why the 2 tribes and half a tribe that were on the other side of Israel, they had to go and still fight with the other 9.5 tribes until all the land has been possessed before they can settle on their own territory. It wasn't a matter of, I've got my share, therefore this is it. It wasn't about you. It was about the nation of Israel taking its possession. National, international ministry, local and vice versa, whatever, is not something that one can put upon himself and impute upon himself. You have ministry depending on the capacity and on the word God has given you. There are people who are, for instance, on TV, but they have no message for nations. They just have ability to be on TV. They have a message for their church. Their message is there. You have to have a message. The message gives you the platform. If you don't have a message, don't desire the platform. The platform will embarrass you if you don't have the message. It will expose you that you have no message. So the message has an audience. Okay, so you get a message, and the message has an audience. So when the right message and the right speaker, and the right audience interact, the ministry explodes. Okay, so having the right person on the right platform with the wrong message and the wrong audience means he's never again going to be invited. It means he was a one-hit wonder. So you have to have the message. The message will meet the audience. Who are you sent to? Paul says, I am an apostle to the Gentiles, inasmuch as Peter is an apostle to the Jews. So there's no confusion. One is not being ambitious of being this or that. They knew what their calling is and the jurisdiction of their authority.
Pastor Africa, as you've said, leadership, it is not, you're not comparing yourself. We don't measure it by power, by revelation, or by prayer. So can you elaborate more on it? And then as the previous question that you've just dealt with, it speaks about, like, for example, capacity. How far can you go? Because there are some of the people, they've got the capacity to go far. So what are the hindrances that can hinder a person to go far beyond whatever, how God maybe made them to be?
Okay, so in the Bible, I'll make an example. There's a story of a guy. His name is Ahimaaz. It's a very unusual name. Ahimaaz hears that Absalom, the son of David, has died in battle. He then asks for permission to deliver the news of Absalom's death. So the commander says, no, not now. There's somebody else who must deliver the news. Ahimaaz begs him. He says, please let me go. Let me go at once. He insists on going. So he's then permitted, but not purposed. So he's permitted because he is insisting on doing this. So they then permit him. So there are many leaders who are permitted, meaning they're allowed to do what they want. They've been insisting on being released. Then their mentors release them to avoid this conflict. They reluctantly release them, but they're not having the freedom in their hearts that it's time. So they are permitted but not purposed. They went but they were not sent. So they go there. They're what I call the prodigal pastors. They journey to a far country so that they have no one to account to. The issue of a prodigal son is going to a place where I'm not accounting to anyone. Is taking an inheritance that didn't work for and going to a place where I don't account to anyone to live a lifestyle where no one will call me to account. And with the people who will not call me to account. So I therefore form a church where the people I preach to are not mature enough to call me to account, where I can do what I want without anybody calling me to account. That's why many Christian leaders only surround themselves with peers, but not with seniors. People who are only impressed with them, who cannot necessarily call them to order when they err. So the prodigal son went from his father, the only person senior enough to correct him, and went to join himself to peers, those who are impressed with his gifts and who don't care about his character. Until he spent all that he had, because it did not work for it, he doesn't know how to remake it. He did not know how to have it again, and he lost it and he went back. So the anointing you have not worked for will lead you into a pigsty, what you did not work for, if you take it inappropriately, you may end up with pigs, eating the food of pigs. So he goes there, but he remembers, fortunately with him, that I need to go back. So many leaders prefer to journey to a far country where there's no accountability. So the issue, Ahimaaz, he then gets the assignment permitted, not purposed. He insists, and they allow him. And so he runs, and he runs so fast, even though the other guy was sent before him. He runs so fast, he outruns the guy who was sent before him and gets there before him to David. When he gets to the courts of David, the watchman on the wall says, they ask who's coming, Ahimaaz. David says, oh, he's the son of a priest. David says, oh, he is a good man, he brings good news. So David expects good news from Ahimaaz because of his priestly line. And then they ask him, what's happening? What's the news? He says, I don't know. I just saw a tumult. He has no news to deliver to David, although he arrived before. There are many people who arrive on platforms, but they have no message. They occupy the right platform. They arrive before you, but they have no message. But don't worry. I call them presumptuous leaders. Don't worry. When you eventually arrive on that platform and you are the one with the message, people will then begin to listen to you because they'll realize, no, you are the one with the message. This one is the one who happened to arrive first. But necessarily it's not the one who started with a message. So Ahimaaz gets in the courts of the king. He has no message. And then the other one arrives and he has the message. And Jehu said to him, he's not like he's jealous of him. He says, no, there is a day where you will go and deliver a message. You. Today is not a day, but there's a day will come. So there is a day, there is a message, and there is a person. And today might not be the day. Wait for the day. Wait for your day of being manifested. If you are hidden, wait until you are manifested. Don't manifest yourself before time. Premature manifestation is a problem. Exposing a baby to the sunlight before their skin has developed the ability to deal with sunlight is dangerous. Because as an adult, I can be on the sunlight doesn't mean my one-day-old baby can also be on the sunlight. Okay? So their melamine has not developed. So therefore, I mustn't assume that a day-old baby can go through the same situations I can go through on the outside. So it's very important that we understand. So unfortunately, there are many presumptuous leaders we have in the church today. So, and one of the mistakes we make in the church is this. We think a good preacher is a good leader. Not everyone who preaches well can lead well. Both in preaching and in leading, there's communication. But in preaching, communication is monotonous. It's monologue. It's one-sided. But in leadership, communication is a dialogue. A leader tells the people where we are going, but he works with them to find the best route to go there. So a leader is not an expert, but is a visionary. He sees where we're going. He gets experts around him to help him to find the best route to get there. A preacher often doesn't know how to lead. Not all lead preachers, but some preachers are bad communicators. They have bad interpersonal skills. They can preach well, but they can't lead well, some preachers. So let's not confuse ability to preach with the ability to lead. But I think we've come to the end of this session. It's been an interesting one. And so if you're watching at home, get in touch with us, ask questions, send us an email, or get in touch with us via social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and these various platforms. My name is Afrika Mhlophe. This is Pressing Matters. See you again. Goodbye.